At Hey Data Rockstars, we are back with our Fun with Data series. So we've done Spotify before, and that was using the Last.fm's Scrobbler. So when you connect that Scrobbler, you are able to scrobble your tracks from any service, Spotify included. And the value of that is having your history over time, since, platforms come and go, and to have that one centralized repository for all your song listening trends. It's pretty cool over the years. And so I've done that for over a decade, and it's really fun. Spotify might not be here with us forever, and who knows what that might go to. Could it be SoundCloud, Bandcamp, something else, and just like Real Player and those others were back in the day. So that's the value there. But today we're going to request directly from Spotify, which they graciously provide, and the interest of user transparency and data ownership. So you can go to Spotify.com, log in, look at that top right profile menu and hit accounts, navigate to privacy settings using menu on the left side, and then you can select extended streaming history. You can unselect the other data if you don't want to receive that, and choose a JSON file. So the TXT file is quite a bit easier to open up and read versus a JSON file, which has this sort of schema where they have a structure for the data, and that makes it easier for a lot of our data systems to be able to correctly interpret the rows and columns of that and restructure it in different ways. So we want it in a JSON file, which we can use in Tableau. So go ahead and choose that as an option if it's there. And you will be receiving an email that says confirm that request. So confirm that request in that email, and then you will receive that from a day or two up to 30 days. In my experience, it's pretty quick, but I think they put that 30 days out there just so that you're not the highest priority out there for them in their operations, and that's okay. So go ahead and wait for that data, but it does expire. So they don't want to have that data file sitting in there in a folder that they pay money to Amazon AWS file servers for and get charged a bunch of money for it. So it does end up expiring. So make sure you click through within that time period before it expires to download it. So it shouldn't be that huge of a file, but we're going to go and do that. We'll get that email up here and get going and graph it in Tableau. So you're going to see something like this. It says your extended streaming history is ready to download. Go ahead and click download, and it's going to automatically pop up a download probably. You might get a pop-up warning or something like this. That was the screen you were at before. When we do that, it's just because I have a version of it before, it's going to download that zip file here to your computer. It's flashing, almost downloaded. Okay, cool. Let's show it in the folder. Pop it up here, and so this one has a folder called My Data. So let's go ahead and extract that before we go, because we want to have a real file folder. In reality, I'm going to do the downloads folder here, but I do not recommend doing that, especially on a Mac, because of the security settings. You want to put that in a regular folder where you store all your data sources. But we're going to just check it out right here. My Data. So mine's going to have InSong 1, 2, 0, 1, and 2. Yours may look a little different. Yours may say something like streaming history. We've got a version of that will say streaming history 0. So if you have under 10,000 songs, it might look like that. You might also see NSOM 0, 1, and 2. So we've got a couple of different ways to look at that. So we're going to open up Tableau and try that first basic one, where streaming history is 0. And then I'm going to show you what to do when you have multiple files like that, so we can combine them in a easier way. So as usual in Tableau, we have a connection to a file to start off. Click JSON this time, not a CSV. I know sometimes we're there. We're going to click streaming history. So I'm going to show you what it looks like for that much more simpler version. Here's the structure. As you can tell, the schema is very simple. We're just going to click OK. You're going to see the data over here. We're going to see immediately that one thing is up. Tableau is not recognizing time too well from these files. Don't know why. It is set as an ABC text string. Need to change that to date and time. Oh, that was artist name. Wow, I am not awake here. Let's make sure we click the right one. There you go. So now that's your end time. And see if we have anything else. We just have milliseconds played, the track, and the artist name. So not a lot on this one. We're going to go ahead and just click through here. I'm going to drop in artist name on the rows there. And you can either use these milliseconds played, or so each line is basically a play, so it's got a count there. So you can do count, or if you wanted, you could do milliseconds played instead, or both. So that's one way to do it. I'm going to go ahead and go with just a play count there, and I can click Control or on a Mac command, so you can keep it here and also drop it on color. And I'm going to change that to a square and sort descending. So now you can see the top artist of whoever this file was. This is actually not me, but that's okay. We're going to put top artist plays. So that's all of over time. Of course, we're going to change the color, so you can change the palette there in that marks tab to something totally different and do it however you like. You could do it in more simple versus the gradients or not, and click OK. So that is one thing you could do here. We're going to look at a whole bunch more graphs, and let me get a little preview of that going here so you can see where we're going and get excited. With the more data that you have in that in-song set of files, you could set up a bunch of different cool graphs. So we've got a few more things. We've got the even episodes of podcasts and things like that. You have the platform that you listened on. Did you listen on an Amazon Echo or a Google Chromecast or on OS X or the web player, all those things, or all these other things. So did you skip it? Did you shuffle? And all of that. So we're going to do a few more. You could look at milliseconds played by a year, plays by country. They actually have the country that you played it in. So that is fascinating. We have the plays by platform, like I mentioned, and platform share of plays, artists over time, and then breaking it down by albums, where the top songs you've listened to, and all of that. So we will even maybe try with cloud. So let's go ahead and do this from scratch. We're going to do a new Tableau file and import that data in. Since that is a little bit tricky in this method with the multiple files, since I have 10,000 songs per each one of those, I'm not sure how much you've listened to. Maybe you're a Spotify feed using it every day as you walk, as you're on the bus, as you're in class, and more. So we want to make sure we combine all those if you have it. We're going to connect to some data. You can also do that file open data. We're going to do JSON file, and in song 0 is the first one we have here. And here's this more complicated schema with more data fields. So we'll click OK. And kind of like we've done in some of the other videos on the joining, we'll do something a little bit different today and do a union. Since it's the same data structure, I'm going to double click that. And we have this view that normally we do joins, where you can drag and drop and put something over here, but we're going to put it below this. You can see it says drag table to union in orange. To get that in that little rectangle. So now we have the 1 below the 0. It might take a little second because we actually have a lot of records this time. We're going to drop 2 in there as well. That's just got a little crazy. So might take a second there to respond. So great, we've got that. So now on this data source tab, we are in Tableau. We will want to make sure it's pulling in the data right. Like guessed the country as geographic, so that's great. And Boolean, the true false for incognito mode. So much for incognito, it's listed right there. And then we have a few different names. So master metadata album name instead of the other just had album name. Similar, we have milliseconds played there, whether you're offline or not. The timestamp there, I've been having trouble changing back to a date and time. It doesn't seem to like that format. So I wouldn't really recommend changing that. So maybe you just keep that as anything else there, maybe a string, just because that will keep it as is. You have your platform, you have the reason for ending, was it skip, end play, etc., and all of that. So we do want to make sure we have TS for timestamp 2, date and time, because that is something we super want to explore. And we're good to go. So now notice I have not saved this yet. Let's get this in here as Spotify, and I want to make sure I save that as a TWBX. That's a beta, and we are going to save. Give that a second, make sure it's all good. It's got the name up there so we know we are set and fun. Okay, so now that we're all set up with the data, we can do all sorts of graphs that we like to do. One thing we could do, drop that country in the detail tab there. So now country is available. So we've got a circle for every country that it thinks I have listened into. I mean, dialed in on a VPN, so that might be a little off, but mostly looks correct. But instead of having it in a circle, I'd like to have it fill out those countries with a color. But these are just the countries I've listened to songs in. I actually want that color to be, well, we could do either milliseconds played, drop that there, or instead of that, we could do that count of plays up here onto color, And of course, you could say on filters, let's make it false or no record for skipped. If it was skipped, let's just skip that. So now we have the countries that I listened to, and you can see looks like I've listened to 22 songs in Germany, 95 in Great Britain, 18 in Iceland, Canada, get 500 plus, and the US, tens of thousands, and a little bit Wales and Bali on a yoga retreat. So there you go. So we have plays by country. We can also, of course, add a label. So doing Control or Command on a Mac and dropping that label, you can drop the plays on there. You can even change that to a different color that fits, keep it automatic, make it bold, that sort of thing. You can also, on text, use those dot dots and say plays. So maybe you want to say plays there. Maybe that's too much. It's up to you. You've got to explore what works best for your presentation of everything. So I could even remove that label. You could just do Control or Command and drop country on the label in case you didn't know what those were. It's got the abbreviations there for this, so that is one thing. You could change that as well, that your call on what you want to show in your data. So let's try a few more things. Let's do artists. So we've got the artists name. Let's go ahead. We have a lot of data here, so that's a little bit different than normal. So sometimes it takes a little bit to load some of this. And let's do the play count as well. And let's do a timestamp above. And here we go. So we've got a lot of timestamps, a lot of artists. Let's see if we can filter the artist here to the top artists by milliseconds played, maybe the top 25. Click OK. So that's a lot more, workable instead of scrolling for a whole bunch of scrolls. Here's our top 25 over time. So this is a count from 2011 to 2023 of those artists. Let's do the color again, and then to turn it into one of those highlight tables or heat maps, or however you like to call them, a square, and drop down that, get this off the default color, and change that to something else. Red's a little harsh. Let's try something a little bit more fun. And null isn't really helpful to us. So that's when there's no artist. Maybe it's something of a compilation track. Maybe it's some other type of thing. So I am going to exclude null. So we just get the top 25 where that is. So we can kind of make sense of this a little bit more. So let's say comp by seconds listened, or milliseconds listened. Probably create a calculated field and make it seconds instead of milliseconds, since no one probably does that. Also TS, no one knows what that is. So you can add that field label for the column, and already says that label up there. Also master metadata, whatever the heck that is. You don't need to say that. People know what those artists are, especially if you're presenting all about music. That should be pretty clear. So you can go ahead and set that up. So there is a highlight table. You can then do some other stuff. So let's see, what else could we do? We've got the timestamp here, and we can make that continuous. We've got artist again. Let's add all members there, and let's bring in our plays there. So it's defaulting to a bar chart, but I'm thinking something else could be a little more fun. So what happens if we do a line chart? Let's exclude null again. And let's do that. Let's do artists. We have that filter again there. Let's do top 10 by that's milliseconds played. So it is a little more doable. So that fits on the screen. You can then even hide this column since you don't need to show that header. So you can see the top artists here. Maybe you flow it in a little bit so you can see when these top artists were listened to over time. So that's a little bit more of an interesting story. Of course, this is the top over the whole time. You could be the top of a certain year, for example. So let's duplicate this and let's filter out year over here. Just do, instead of all of these years, let's do just the last few. So, and apply that. Let's try something different. So, we've got a lot of labels here. So, let's go with the, let's get year off there. Okay. So now we have the artists best 3 years. So that is a little bit more handleable than looking at that whole entire time. It's at Christmas, maybe not there. Let's try that sunset one. I like that one quite a bit. You could do label, and of course you can make it bold. You could change things a little bit differently. So what if we had actually, instead of artists, we had album, and we could do album for the label, and oh, those artists again. Okay, we could do album for the label here, and then maybe we do artists for the color instead of the song amounts. So yeah, that's a little bit weird, but I think I like it the other way. Let's go with that. That is a lot of artists. So, oh, that's the album. Let's do top artists. There you go. And maybe we even put another filter on it. Do top by seconds played. That's a lot more workable. Okay, cool. If we can fit that entire view on there, it's not showing all of those. So, that's the null one. So you'll want to exclude that as well. That's why it's blank, because it's null. You can see all the top ones here. Cool. All right. So let's do something like a chart with the listens by the platform. So we talked about that a little bit. So the platform here, and we've got a problem, as you can see already. Let's do the counts. So we're going to do the counts of plays on each one of those platforms. Now you'll notice something there. Android has 1,000,000 versions, as OS X has a few. There's 1,000,000 Amazon Echoes with a salmon that's not playing it on a fish, although the Billy the Bass Fish would be amazing to play some songs on. Got Google Cast, a bazillion, and 1,000,000 different types of Chrome players. I was uninstalled it and installed it on different laptops and different versions of Windows and everything like that. So what we want to do is create a group. So there's a few different ways to do this, but let's put all of these Androids. So I'm going to click that and click Shift on the keyboard, and you'll notice a paperclip there. So that's to group something together. So that's a start to it. I'm going to do a few of these this way with the paperclip, but there's actually another way to do it as well. It'll show you. We're going to put all the Amazon ones together there, and we're going to do Google Cast all the way, yikes, all the way down here. Still, okay, still going. I don't even know if I started there. Okay. And all the way down there. You had one Sonos. That's not the startup that I was consulting for, I think, probably. Okay, and web player, Chrome, all the way to here. So you'll notice here, if you find the little paperclip, we have platform group. So we can right-click on that, click edit group, and you'll notice these. So we have this set of groups under the arrows within this platform, and you can rename it. It's kind of smushing them all together. This is just going to be reading better to Android. It's going to be OS X, and this is called the Google Cast. So you can see them all there, and you can add these to there. So Android TV, you can highlight those. I'm going to drop that. Actually, that fits more in Google Cast than the mobile Android operating system. This one is Facebook. I have one of those. Probably one of 5 people that do. You also have, looks like some smart TVs, that kind of thing. So I'm going to put that in the group. Smart TV. Okay. So these are monthly boring. I'm just going to do a little more really quick. I'm going to drop Windows all into one and call that Windows. So there's a feature in Tableau here as well that like the ones that don't have a group, you can just include that in other and you can move those too. So I see Tizen, I could move that to another thing or see Windows and I can drop that into the Windows one up here and that kind of thing. You can also do it by right clicking. So we've got all those in other, and that's fine. So I'm just going to go with that. You can make it perfect later. Click OK. And so now we are graphing by the group. In the future, I don't think it works for this one as well, but you can do both. You can do platform there. So you've got a list where they're nested. You could do platform group to make a color. So just the color is based on those. It's not really super easy to see, but maybe mixed squares you can kind of see that. But what we're going to do instead is graph by that platform group. So now you can do a bar chart. And so I'm going to do Control Shift B or Command Shift B on that, and you can make it bigger. The other way to do that is to make it fit the entire view, make it super big. Who knows what those angles are? So we need to Control or Command drop the counts there onto the label and maybe the platform as well. Oh, it's got a really low one. Let's make sure. Oh yeah, let's rename that to red the player. That's too big for the graph. Should be fixed there. On the label, what we can do is match that marked color so you see which one it's associated with really easily. Make that a little bit bigger. And you can, of course, make the font size difference per the line that you're talking about. So whichever one you want the user to look at first. Do you want them to focus on the number or do you want them to focus on the platform? And then if they are thinking more in human terms and trying to figure out what that number is, you could actually just write it human style with the term right there. So like we could do play share by one. Could even, lower the opacity a little bit, add a order, and change the colors to something non-default. Get out of the default, set something new. So there you go, send that palette, and we have got a different share by platform right there. So I'm going to double click that and duplicate it. So pie chart is one thing we could do. You could also do that as a packed bubble chart here. Do Command or Control click and drop that as well. Do the same thing and right place up here. Take the bold. So this is kind of nice. These are usually a little bit tricky because the ones that are close to there, like this 2,000, 4,400, and 3,750, they're kind of close. And having that number gives you some context so you can tell how precise that is. If you are only really trying to show how big listening, in this case on Android, is compared to the others, maybe you don't need those numbers. But if you're trying to show any bit of a difference between the ones that are close together, usually our brain isn't super great at processing like the difference between these two right now. So whether you want to do it this way or this way really depends on the context that you have. So that's pretty fun. Maybe we could check out another view to do. We've got, yeah, these are pretty simple. So let's see what else we've got. We've got artists over time, little heat map. We've done that. Top songs. So that's one thing we could do. And top albums and artists. And a word cloud. All right, well, let's do a little more and then we will wrap up. So let's do this. So very simple. We can do artists. So we've got that. Master made it. Yeah, artist name. I cannot talk. And we can exclude null like we did before. And now we can do that counts right here. I think I put keep only instead of exclude. So there you go. Let's pull that off and right click. And instead of keep only, you can click exclude. All right, and descending sort, and that's the top. And what we did before was do a bar chart. So now you've got the artist up here. And instead of this view with all of this text, which is kind of hard to read, I want to see the artist name on the bar itself. So Control or Command, drop that onto label. Nope, it didn't make the Control or Command. So let me try that again. There we go. So normally you see it on the right like that. You can change that to match the mark color and be bold and maybe instead of having it to the right, you can have it to the left inside there, in the middle, or to the right of the bar. So we can choose a different way to do that. I kind of like this. It's a little bit cleaner. You could match this to, let's make this color a little cooler. And then in hiding that, you could do the header there or the label. So there you go. Now we've got the artist's by play counts with a label like that. So you can also duplicate this, and instead of it having the artist there, actually let's go this way. So instead of having the artist as the label, let's do the album as the color. So the album as a color lets us break down that artist and to see what albums make up all of these listens. So is it just one album of the artist that I'm listening to, or a bunch? So I'm going to click that to highlight it, and then I'm going to click descending. So that way it's got the ones I listen to, just a little bit of those albums in order to the ones I listen to, well, the most, except for what happened with that little one there. Probably something I'd have to troubleshoot to figure out what it is, but at least it's somewhat in order there, so you can see some of the bigger ones there. Obviously, Stuff Chat Seeds is an excellent album, Illinois, and I'm listening to that 172 times versus maybe some of these other more obscure ones. So let's do artists, albums there. Awesome. So another thing we could use one of those bubble charts. Let's duplicate this and see what happens when we click a mobile chart. All right, so I think it tried to pull everything in there. It's still using the count, it's using the artist and the album. So maybe we just have the artist as the color. I really don't really recommend more than 3 or 4 colors per graph, and being kind of judicious with how you do that. But if this is more of an exploratory graph where you're just like, okay, here's a bunch of crazy circles, what can I explore here? And that I'm using this tooltip, which you can edit here, and you could just say, has a long name there. So you want to make this more human sounding. You could type album. Maybe it's obvious. Maybe you don't need that. Just can keep it simple and put plays here. So that's one way to do a tooltip with this hover like that. You could also do it like this, where you can be like, more human, had this many plays. So it's a little more human sounding. So you can write it just like a sentence, and make that even, you could say the album from, that's where the full sentence. Sometimes the album Are We Dreaming from Kaiban had 2 plays. So all of this is pretty fun to see. Could try to sort it a little bit, but doesn't really. It's a bit of chaos there. Maybe we narrow this down to make this getting timestamp as TS here, but let's do timestamp filter. Let's do years, and maybe it is just this year. See what I'm listening to right now. Click apply. Now there's a lot fewer here. Again, we've got the album name labeled there, so you can see the same artist, Armin Hammer, has these red ones. Well, maybe that's a slightly different red. That's what happens when you have too many colors. But you can see that kind of mix there. Cool. You could also move year to rows. So the screen's not huge, so it's all packed in there. So maybe I just click the last 3, keep only. And now we've got a smaller subset of those years as well. So that's one thing you could do. You could also, we have it filtered down to just a few years. So maybe we bring artists also into rows. And there's way too many of them. So, let's do something a little bit different. Maybe we just pick those. So you can do a lot of different things. It's really kind of figuring out what kind of presentation do you want to see. So we've got that many artists. Maybe we keep just those top ones, and that's what we present on. Maybe we duplicate this, and then maybe we do a pie charts of the different albums per artists and see what we've got there. So that's a little too many. Maybe we just keep those on these walls. You can see this one's not that interesting because they're all mostly one album in this year, but just another thing you could explore and play with and try new things. So definitely check that out. We might as well do a word cloud as well. Let's pop in there and do one of those. All right, so we're going to bring in the 2 year first. We can filter this down because this could be pretty huge with all those tracks. Let's do this just the last few years. And let's do track. We're going to bring that into text. So here are all the tracks of the last few years. And what I want to do is change the, no, let's see what we could do. Let's change the count of plays to the size of the text. Except for I do not want one of those. We want a regular thing. So let's see if we can try something different. Let's do artist as color. And you want size to be milliseconds played. How about that? Let's see if we can do that. And I don't want one of these tree charts. So let's see what happens when I can keep it as text and control and drag that to size. Will it let me do that without fighting me? Looks like it's going to calculate it. Hopefully we'll get there. A lot of tracks to process. So sweet. Now we've got a word cloud. So you can see the biggest words are the ones that had the most milliseconds played. So you can see Kids Don't Fall in Love, got Heroes by Alesso, Falling Apart by Arm & Hammer, Want You by Arm & Hammer, I Want You by Alice in Wonderland. These are all going to be there. So I'm going to call this a word cloud and go from there. So you could even do this by year. So we only did a few years there. So now you can see how it might differ by year. So maybe we just do a process, tell them to process. So there's the last 3 years, but those are pretty tiny. So it depends on what you want to show. Maybe we just show 2022 and 23, keep only, or you could have excluded 2021. And now you can compare those a little bit, just see kind of exploratorily, like here you go. Now it's a little bit different. So those were super popular this year, last year. Falling Apart was a little more popular, and Saving Lives also. So fun stuff to do. Definitely try whatever you can, explore, try new ways to graph it. There's so many different ways to show it, and have a bunch of fun. And we will see you next time.